Hello dear friends, welcome to my new channel. There will be many interesting stories here. Oh Leisure, I need to talk to you. Matthew was standing in the doorway, still wearing his coat, but without the same confidence. His voice was hesitant, but somehow confused, as if he had rehearsed these words many times, but even now he did not know where to start. Oh Leisure came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a waffle towel. There was a pot of mushroom soup on the stove. The cabbage patties are almost baked in the oven. It was a cool evening, but the house was warm and cozy, smelling of fresh pastries and fragrant seasoning. She looked at her husband with mild fatigue and attention at the same time. I am listening, she replied simply. I am leaving, Matthew exhaled. I am going to another woman. He thought that these words would cause a storm, that she would either scream, turn pale, or sit on the sofa, burying her face in her hands. That there would be tears, questions, demands, sins. He even prepared several versions of soothing phrases for himself. It was spinning in my head. It is not your fault. It is just that the feelings are gone. We're both tired. But instead of Leisure only nodded slightly and said indifferently, and I already know everything. Matthew was taken aback, even swayed slightly forward, as if he had bumped into an invisible wall. You know, seriously. He muttered, swallowing nervously. And a long time ago, not very long ago, but not yesterday either. And to be honest, I am not surprised. It is good that you finally decided to say it yourself. I couldn't take this performance anymore. She spoke calmly, almost matter-of-factly. It was as if this was not about the end of an almost 20-year marriage, but about some kind of unsuccessful furniture delivery order that should have been cancelled a long time ago. Why didn't you say anything? Matthew's voice he wavered, and resentment appeared in him. Why didn't you ask? Didn't you start a conversation? I didn't make a scandal, finally. Leisure sat on the edge of the sofa, carefully placing a towel next to it. Her hands were thin and dry, with slightly swollen veins. She looked tired, but not broken. Your mom lived with us for almost 3 weeks. I waited for her to leave. I didn't want to make a scene in front of an elderly man. She is a good person, it is not her fault that things are like this. Matthew was silent. He suddenly realized, what is a woman saying to him, who understood everything a long time ago and has already decided everything internally. He was only going to hit with a confession. I thought it would be the final cut, and he would leave with a beautiful gesture. Maybe even get tears of forgiveness. And in response, quiet clarity. Which disarmed him. He slowly took off his coat and laid it on the back of a chair. Don't you want to know who she is? Leisure raised her eyebrows a little. What for? It is enough for me to know that you made your choice. I don't care who she is, the office girl or the receptionist. The point is the same, you're a gun. Not to me. Matthew opened his mouth to say something in his own defense, but he fell silent. It was surprisingly quiet in this house. The clock wasn't even ticking. Leisure took off the battery a long time ago because the ticking prevented her from thinking. He suddenly felt like he didn't want to leave. Not now, not like this. But the train, launched by himself, was already rushing forward. I have to pick up some things. And take it right now, she interrupted. I want to start cleaning. Too much has accumulated. And you will become part of that old stuff, Matthew. You're not talking about comfort anymore, you're talking about deception. She got up and went back to the kitchen, as if the conversation is over. Sight. Checked the oven. Matthew was left alone in the hallway with a suitcase of plans that suddenly turned to ashes. He took out his phone and sent the message. I am on my way. She said. I didn't mind. The answer came instantly. Milana, my smart girl, I am waiting. We're going to be friends, for real. Matthew looked at the closed kitchen door, behind which his wife, still his wife, was quietly busy with dinner. And I thought, she didn't even ask if that Milana loved me. She didn't ask if we were happy. So she really doesn't care, or she is already gone. To ask. He left, and the pies were baking in the oven. Matthew never considered himself a man who would commit treason. Of course, there had been a couple of brief outbursts of passion in his youth, but it all seemed like nothing more than proof that he was in shape. He had a quiet, settled, and even comfortable marriage with Oulasia. She didn't ask unnecessary questions, didn't check correspondence, didn't throw tantrums. She just lived nearby, economical, reliable, loyal. And as he thought at the time, a little boring. And then Milana appeared. She worked in the planning department at their company, but until recently he hardly noticed her. One of the many with a phone in her hand, on heels, with a bright manicure. But one day she came into his office on a completely business-related matter, to discuss the delivery schedule, and state. Are you always this serious? What is it? She asked, sitting down in an armchair and crossing her legs, so that Matthew involuntarily looked away. Or just at the sight of people like me. He didn't know what to say. She was either joking or flirting. It all started from that day. First, coffee in the dining room, then discussion of new projects, then evening correspondence in the messenger. And one day, she didn't after a while, she wrote, I know I shouldn't but I can't help but think about you. Matthew stared at the screen for a long time, his fingers frozen over the keyboard. He wanted to delete the message, wanted to leave the chat, but instead typed, You can't get out of my head either. That is how his double life began. Milana was different. She laughed loudly, hugged for no reason, demanded attention like a sip of water. She couldn't stand indifference, and turned every meeting into a performance. At first it was flattering. Matthew felt as if he had returned to his youth. They were flirting with him again, waiting, jealous. And Milan she was a mess, or at least she pretended to be. Her eyes shone when he entered the office. She sent selfies during her lunch break, complained about loneliness, an empty apartment, and the fact that she couldn't be with anyone but him. There was more pressure on him every day. One day, when they were sitting in a car outside the city, she said, Maud, I am tired of being a mystery. I want a normal relationship. I want to go to the movies with you for dinner. I don't want to hide anymore. He nervously lit a cigarette. Wait, you know I have a family. Wife, adult children, mother, which, at the slightest scandal, will fan the fire. And everything is too subtle at work. I can't quarrel with the director, you know. Milana was silent, staring out the window as raindrops dripped down the glass. So you're just using me, she suddenly said softly. Am I a break from your wife for you? Are you not going to change anything? Milana, you know that is not the point, he muttered, trying to speak softly. It is just complicated. No, Matthew, it is simple. Either you come with me, or I'll tell you everything myself. You're your wife, your boss. Let everyone know what kind of man you are. I am kind and naive, by the way, and I am not going to stay in the shadows. He didn't answer. Just silently started the engine and drove her home. The evening was long and stuffy, as if the city itself felt the impending collapse. The next day, he received a file from her. It contained screenshots of their conversations, shared photos, and even recorded voice messages. In the cover letter, she wrote, I haven't shown it to anyone yet. I am giving you time to think. Matthew realized that it was over. The noose had tightened. If she leaks this to the boss, there will be a scandal. His dream of the deputy's post will instantly collapse. And the children, the sons are already adults, with characters, will not forgive such a thing. Mother, elderly, stubborn. She firmly believed in her son as decency. And Milana was pushing. Ultimatums, insults, tears, kisses, apologies, passion. Everything is mixed up. On the one hand, she is hot and demanding Milana. On the other hand, is quiet but stubbornly silent Oulasia. He felt like he was between two shores when the water starts to boil and the boat loses its balance. And then he made up his mind. I'll say I'll tell her myself, he wrote to Milana. When? Tomorrow. After work. Are you really going to leave? Yes. He hoped that everything would go violently, emotionally, with screams, and then relief. But I didn't expect the house to smell like pies, and my wife would just say, and I already know everything. Deep down, Matthew desperately wanted Oulasia to cry, to make her voice tremble, to persuade him to stay, to grab his sleeve, to beg, don't go away. It wasn't even a call of love, but rather some kind of male selfishness. The desire to feel needed, irreplaceable, important, to make sure that he still matters, that there is no way without him. But that didn't happen, and it hurt more than any tears. The next morning, when Matthew woke up in Milana's apartment, he felt not joy, but a strange heaviness. He was lying on a mattress that was too soft, not at all to his taste, and staring at the ceiling. Milana was still asleep, sprawled across the width of the bed with her hair spread over the pillow. He is used to Oulasia. She got up early, said, "Good morning." Made coffee, then sat down at the kitchen table, pursing her lips. Getting my feet under me and going over my to-do list for the day. Milana, on the other hand, dozed like a girl from a commercial, beautifully, for a long time and with a complete lack of desire to start the day. Matthew got up, quietly undressed, went out onto the balcony, took out a cigarette, although he had promised himself to quit for a long time, and suddenly realized that he did not want to return to the apartment at all. Oulasia didn't come for her things or her documents. Last night, when he went out with a suitcase that didn't even have half of his things in it, Oulasia didn't say a word. She didn't hold his sleeve, didn't ask him to stay, didn't ask him to think. She just reminded me, don't forget the keys, leave it on the dresser. The masters are coming to see me tomorrow. I am starting to redo the bedroom. He then tried to point out that she had already planned everything. It is like I've been waiting for this. She just looked at him calmly and with restraint. You said yourself, you're leaving. So everyone has their own life now. And everything. He is gone forever. And now, looking at the city through the balcony glass, he couldn't understand why it was such a shame that he wasn't stopped. A week later, Matthew returned to Oulasia under the pretext of picking up the rest. I wanted to see what would happen. Check how she is holding up. Maybe there is a chance after all that she would make a scene, and that would calm him down in her own way. Olayja opened the door, holding a box of books in her hands. Oh, finally. Can you help me carry it to the pantry? Where to? He didn't understand. Into the basement. I decided to empty the room of everything superfluous. I am making a personal space for myself without memories, without dust, without other people's menace socks. By the way, she added with a slight grin. Matthew followed her, awkwardly stepping over the threshold like a stranger. The apartment has changed. There was no heavy sofa in the living room anymore. There was a bright sofa bed, a Scandinavian-style armchair, and new curtains. There is a seascape painting on the wall, which Olayja once wanted to buy, but then he talked her out of it. Why do we need this rack for so much money? Now it was hanging. And, admittedly, it looked stylish. Yes, when you know what you want, everything turns out quickly, she replied without turning around. Matthew felt the sting again. Was she really better off without him? Isn't she suffering? Olayja, were you worried at all? What is it? He asked suddenly. She stopped and looked at him carefully. There was no bitterness or anger in her voice, just weariness. Matthew, I've been living with you for many years. By you. I laughed, endured, closed my eyes, tried, and then realized that I was losing myself with you. You become a draft. Who walks in the apartment and slams the doors disgustingly. And now you're gone. And I finally felt like I was living in my own house by myself, with my own life, with my own choice. So no, I didn't cry at night. I finally slept peacefully. He stood rooted to the spot. The shot was accurate. What if I asked you to come back? Olayja smiled. Good, for real. But with a touch of finality. Late. Life is not draft. And even if you can erase some things in it, not everything can be rewritten. Especially trust. He left, leaving the keys on the dresser as requested. He didn't get into the elevator, but went up the stairs. Already on the landing of the second floor, he heard the elevator open on their floor. As the lock clicked, Olayja says to someone, "Hello, will you help in time?" The voice was cheerful, lively, female, or maybe male. He couldn't tell, but his heart was clenching. Matthew returned to Olayja's apartment a few weeks later with a cold intention. Not just to look, not just under the pretext of picking up a charger or a pair of shorts, and to find out what he has the right to. He even mentally replayed the speech on the way. Owls, you and I have lived together for almost 20 years. The apartment was acquired in marriage. I also invested. I am not going to live with just one suitcase. There will be a section, whether you want it or not. Olayja, he said, otherwise. I thought we should calmly discuss the issue of the apartment. After all, this is a common property. At that time, she was mopping the floor in the hallway, dressed in a simple gray t-shirt and sweatpants. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and her face was without makeup. But everything about her radiated confidence. The confidence of a woman who proves nothing to anyone else. Not to myself. Much less to my ex-husband. She straightened up, leaned on the mop and calmly said, "Are you thinking of suing?" "Why not?" He shrugged, trying not to show his tension. "Half of the apartment is mine. Don't you think about it, I won't let you get on my neck." Olayja smiled, but not mockingly, but a little tired. "But you shouldn't have done that. You waste a lot of time and nerves, and all for nothing. Matthew tensed up. Why is that? She wiped her hands on towels, went into the room, and a minute later she returned with a folder in her hands. Do you remember that when you bought the apartment, your mother gave half the amount? Of course, it was a condition. She owns half of it, so that everything is fair. My parents helped. Yours? No. I've never forgotten that, he replied with emphasis. It is great that you remember that, Olayja nodded. So, just before she left, we went to the notary with her. She gave me her share. Matthew froze. What did you say? She gave it to me. In a legal way with documents. You can take a look. He snatched out the folder and scanned it. Signatures, seals. Date. It is real. Non-lip. Real transfer of ownership. She couldn't. Mom wouldn't do that. We discussed everything with her. She was on my side until I told her everything I know about Milan, about your attitude towards me, about your indecision and lies. And you know what she told me? Matthew was silent. He didn't want to know anymore. I am tired of hoping that my son will get smarter. He repeats his father's mistakes. I also hung out with women until everything fell apart. I will not allow my son to waste what should remain a grandson. That is what she said. And you know, I love her. I understand. Matthew did not sit down because he was tired. It is just that my legs suddenly felt wobbly. He felt the ground slipping away from under his feet. As everything he had hoped for was crumbling like a house of cards. So there is nothing left for me? Olayja calmly replied, a quarter, just the part that is legally registered to you. The rest is not. So think about whether it is worth wasting your nerves. Moreover, you know, the children will definitely not understand your idea. Especially after we found out about Milan. He ran a hand over his face. My heart was pounding like a schoolboy who was caught cheating. Mom, he muttered, I would never, I thought, but you see, everything falls into place someday. And don't talk about your mother like that. She also would never have thought that you would follow in your father's footsteps. He got up, didn't say goodbye, just left. When he returned home, to that new apartment, Milana greeted him in lace underwear, with a glass of wine and candles. The smile was expectant. Well, did you win? What is it? She whispered. He looked at this beautiful, perfumed girl who was playing family and felt empty. Not really, he muttered. Put the candles away, I am not in the mood. Matthew has a headache. The events of the last few days flashed before my eyes like a kaleidoscope. At first, everything looked like the beginning of a new life. Milana fussed when Matthew moved his things, hugged him, fussily put shorts in the wardrobe, showed him where your slippers would be, and which mug she had already set aside just for him. The apartment smelled of jasmine and vanilla. There were new white and grey linens in the bedroom. It is like in a beautiful movie about a second chance. But after a week, it became clear that living with Milan was not the same as loving Milan in the work chat. She woke up almost before leaving for work, did not make coffee, but bought armor on the way. In the evening, she could call her friend and leave for a massage without explanation. The kitchen was a mess, and every time Matthew couldn't help noticing that there was nothing on the stove again, Milana clicked resentfully. I am not a housewife. You knew who you were dating. One evening, when he returned from work tired and hungry, the apartment smelled of expensive perfumes, and instead of dinner there was a bottle of new eau de toilette and a box with the jewelry boutique's logo on the table. Did you buy me a piece of jewelry like I asked for? With those eyes, she asked. Matthew was taken aback. What kind of jewelry? Well, that emerald necklace. I sent you a link. This is collection. It may not be tomorrow. Milana, are you crazy? There was a rattle in his voice. Do you understand how much it costs? She rolled her eyes. Well, it all started. Money, money, money. I thought you were a man. He got up from the table, without touching the noodles she ordered from the restaurant, and went to the balcony. A man, he thought. I felt like a real man when I came home, where it smelled like dinner, where the kids were asking how the day had been, where my wife didn't ask for necklaces, made pies that smelled all over the entrance. But then he got tired of it, of the mundanity, of the routine, of predictability. Now he understood. It was precisely in predictability that there was comfort. On the weekend, Milana suggested going to the mall. She wanted to stare, but the staring quickly turned into shopping. He handed over the credit card without arguing, but in the evening, counting the balance on the account, he felt anxious. Milana, we can't do this. I am not a millionaire. Well, I am sorry, I am used to a certain level. And if you can't provide it, that is your problem, she snapped, without looking up from the phone. He left the room and slammed the bathroom door. There, sitting on the edge of the tub, he opened it. Messenger, and almost wrote Olasia. Just like you. But I erased the text and closed the phone. A month later, health problems began. My stomach was malfunctioning. There is too much fast food, greasy food, ordered dinners, where everything is salt, sugar, spices, and no worries. His blood pressure jumped, maybe because of nerves, or maybe because of the cigarettes he had returned to. Milana snorted when he said he was sick. You're just being hypochondriac. Everything hurts. Maybe you should visit your grandmother. In the evening, he found a package of blood pressure pills and put them in his jacket pocket. I went to the pharmacy on the way back, passing by their house with Olasia. The windows were lit, and my heart ached. Matthew spent several days looking for an excuse to go to Olasia. I decided to say that I was looking for a lost document. Olasia's house smelled of fresh pastries. She opened in a homemade sweater with the sleeves rolled up. There was a meat pie on the kitchen table. The second one was baking in the oven. There is a vase of flowers on the windowsill. Why did you clean it up? She smiled. Are you bored? He didn't answer. He just sat down at the table and, almost without looking, muttered, "Can I have a piece of pie?" Of course, the meeting broke down, right that all the food was left to me. I'll treat you. He ate in silence, chewing slowly, with his eyes closed. It was a taste that brought him back to his present self. Not to the new glossy Matthew, but to the one who built a house, raised his sons, fixed the faucet in the kitchen, brought home a Christmas tree in December, and then her phone rang. She replied in a light, almost purring voice. Hello, dear. Yes, I am home. Did you want to stop by? Of course, visiting. I am waiting. And she looked at Matthew. I am sorry, I have a personal conversation. Can I step back? He was sitting as if under hypnosis. He was definitely not from eating, but from thinking. What if she is really waiting for someone so soon? About the fact that Matthew himself quickly jumped into buckwheat with his wife alive, as his mother said about his father. Matthew had already forgotten. When he returned home, Milana was drinking wine and scrolling through a website with chandeliers. Look at how you like it, dear, it is true, but the ceilings in the new apartment will be perfect. What new apartment? Ours. You said you'd get a raise soon. We'll buy it with a mortgage, and then I'll give it another lift. The director promised a bonus. He passed by in silence. He walked past her into the bedroom, lay down on the bed, and buried his face in the pillow. In my head one phrase was spinning. Owls. I am sorry. I think I got it all mixed up. Owls knew that heaviness was normal. Even if you've been waiting for a breakup, even if you're ready internally, there is still a residue in your body. The habit of the voice, of the key creaking in the door, of his cup on the table. One day, all this disappears, and the echo remains. But this echo is not pain. It is the silence in which something new is born. Then, when she found out about Matthew's infidelity from a friend, she gave herself 3 days for Hondra, bought a truffle cake, ate sweets, and cried for exactly that long. As long as it takes to breathe out a grudge, no more. My husband was just on a business trip, or rather with Milana. Then Galina Ivanovna's mother-in-law arrived. They had a kind, respectful relationship in which there was a place for warmth and restrained support. She didn't ask directly, but she immediately felt a change in Oulage's tone, in the silence at dinner, in how the hostess of the house suddenly became a stranger in her own walls. The next day, she suggested, "Come to the park with me tomorrow, take a walk, breathe, because the apartment is stuffy." Oulage understood what was going on, but she didn't. She refused. They walked along the alley for a long time, talking about the weather, prices, and repairs. Until Galina Ivanovna stopped, she looked into Oulage's eyes and asked quietly, "Did he betray you?" Oulage nodded without tears, without details, just yes. And then the mother-in-law said firmly, "Maybe he'll come to his senses again." Men, they often only think on the edge. And if not? If he doesn't realize what he has lost, kick him in the neck. Don't repeat my mistakes, owls. I was silent, I endured, I thought, for the sake of the children, for the sake of the family, and then I realized that I had ruined my life. Don't do that. You're stronger, you still have a head. When Matthew moved in with Milana and Oulage was left alone in the apartment, it was as if she had seen her for the first time. Every corner now reflected not life, but compromise. Those heavy burgundy curtains are not her taste. Matthew just insisted that the dark room was more comfortable. A closet she hated, but it was roomy. The table in the kitchen, the one that seemed bulky and alien to her, but she once gave up. Let it be, don't quarrel over the table. Now she walked through the rooms, as if she were walking through a gallery of an old version of herself. And suddenly she realized, I don't have to give in to anyone anymore. She ordered the sofa where they watched TV in the evenings to be taken away. I took off the curtains and hung up the light ones, the ones I wanted. I opened the windows, let in the air, and visited a new life. The boys studied in another city, lived in a dormitory, and called in the evenings. She didn't make a tragedy out of it. She was happy for them, they were growing up, and at the same time, for the first time in many years, her life became quiet, spacious, and free. And with the silence came the realization that nothing helps to cope with the hum of thoughts like work. With your hands and the changes around you. Oulage began to rebuild everything from the interior mood to the bedside table in the hallway. She changed the furniture, glued the wallpaper, repainted the walls. Not because it is necessary, but because it is possible. Friends and colleagues started coming in more often. One day they gathered to celebrate the completion of the renovation. They brought cheese and wine, laughed, and shared the news. Olayja put down the pie dish. That is what I am proud of. It is still warm. I baked it myself. Dasha was surprised. According to my grandmother's recipe, it was on that day that Olayja suddenly realized that she was no longer the same Olayja. And not Matvia's ex-wife. She is a woman with a new chapter in her life, free, mistress of her space. One day, in line at the pharmacy, she ran into a man with a book by Remark in his hand. She couldn't help but smile. He also replied with a smile. It is a good book, the man said, pointing at her gaze. I read it 20 years ago. It reads differently now. Everything reads differently when you start life all over again, Olayja replied quietly. Olayja walked and thought that she had changed Matvi. What happened anyway? What changed him so imperceptibly and irreversibly? After all, everything seemed to be fine between us, she thought. Home, children, stability. We never lived in luxury, but we could afford a lot. We didn't fight, we didn't break dishes, we didn't scream. He came home from work, and I was cooking dinner. We were like a real family. Or so it seemed to me, but the longer she walked, the more clearly she realized that everything seemed only to her. Matvi didn't change one thing. Everything changed him a little bit. Years of habit, the transition from love to convenience. I wanted lightness, novelty, delight, which requires neither depth nor effort. And then he went to a place where it was noisier, where it was easier, where he could feel young, energetic, and important again, as long as he didn't have to pay. A thought matured in my head. Some men live not because they feel bad, but because they feel good. It is to come, too stable, too real. And they don't know how to live in the present. They always want something different, changes, fireworks, and sensations, like moth flying to a candle. And when the wings burn, it is too late. Galina Ivanovna's mother-in-law came to visit. Olayja slowly poured tea into porcelain cups. The house was pleasantly quiet. My mother-in-law was sitting across from me, wrapped in her favorite soft shawl. Galina Ivanovna, I am wondering why men cheat. Not those who were initially incapable of attachment, but those who were decent, reliable, who loved, cared, and then suddenly left. Galina Ivanovna looked at her attentively, but did not interrupt. Olayja continued, I am not accusing. Not now. I just want to understand. And I am thinking more and more, it is not about us, it is not about women. Sometimes a man leaves, not because someone doesn't like him, but because he ceases to respect himself. She paused and, smiling slightly, added, I see how many men confuse inner fatigue with disappointment in their partner. It seems to them that the wife is to blame. She became different. It doesn't inspire, it doesn't delight, it doesn't pull. But the truth is that it was he who became different, who lost himself, his purpose, and his drive. And he doesn't go to decide, to search, to talk. He goes to the other one. Not because she is better, but because in her eyes he is someone again. My mother-in-law was silent. Just because she was clutching the cup. Olayja realized that everything she was saying was hitting the nail on the head. Male infidelity, she continued, is often not about passion, but about escaping from a sense of acelessness. But instead of asking themselves what is wrong with me, they start blaming my life, my wife, my life. And they find a new one, not as a new love, but as a mirror where they are reflected beautiful and strong again. Galina Vanavna suddenly she smiled, but there was more wisdom than lightness in that smile. But the mirror does not change the face. If it is empty inside, a new woman won't save you. It will be bad for everyone, and for the man in the first place. Her mother-in-law suddenly covered her hand with her own. You're saying everything right, Oulaja. I realized this too. Looking at my faithful. Both women fell silent. Everyone thought about their experiences. And the tea was especially warm. Matthew's life turned into a real roller coaster without seat belts and with steep descents. He signed up for this attraction, where he was drawn into the promises of a new passionate life. But now every morning he woke up not with a smile, but with a dull irritation in his stomach and, unfortunately, not only in a figurative sense. Gastritis, which has developed in recent months, has become a constant companion. Eat dry food, eating ordered dishes from the cafe with pills. This was the freedom he had dreamed of when he left Oulaja. Milana didn't cook. Milana was busy with her work, herself, and cleansing her soul and body. He tried to say, Milana, but it is impossible. I am coming home from work. There is dust in the apartment, dishes in the sink from last night. There is only a lemon and a bottle of water in the fridge. You promised, it will be different. I don't have 8 arms, by the way, she replied sharply. You knew I wasn't homely. I am modern. And if you need soup and slippers, go back to the 90s. They were fighting. Matthew was screaming. Milana slammed doors, sometimes went to spend the night with a friend. And a couple of days later she started playing hostess. For show, she vacuumed, baked cupcakes from a ready-made mixture, blew the dust off the table, pulled on an apron, which I've never worn it in my life. He was calming down. They were reconciling. You should have been so strong. How can you handle everything? I am so lucky to have you. And then the request, buy me these purse. Well, please. She is on sale right now. I deserve it. Matthew nodded, bought, and a week later everything was back. An empty refrigerator, unwashed floors, unwashed shorts. Clothes thrown directly into an armchair, reproaches, scandals. He was tired. To the point of trembling, to the point of nausea, literally and figuratively. The doctor told me to follow a diet, not to be nervous, and to rest more. He just grinned back. But most often in something else was in his mind, Oulaja. And not as a memory of the wife he once loved, but as an image of a house where there was peace, where it smelled of chicken soup, and pies were taken out of the oven. Not from a delivery package, where he could lie down on the couch, turn on the football, and not be afraid that he would be accused of inaction. Where in the summer, they went to the sea with the boys, and Oulaja smeared everyone with sun cream, forced them to eat a lot of fruits and berries. He was looking at Milan now. She was beautiful, bright, with painted but empty eyes, and I dreamed not of her, but of boiled potatoes with dill, of striped towels in the kitchen, and a warm blanket, which Oulaja always put on when it got cool in the house. He wanted to go back. Matthew stood at the door, as if on the edge of a precipice. He took a long time to get ready, approached the entrance, stopped, pretended to call someone, then turned around. Then he would come up again, stand in front of the entrance, and look at the windows. A warm light was on the 5th floor. It was in the room where he and Oulaja used to watch movies in the evenings. Where Oulaja always covered him with a blanket when he fell asleep on the couch. Now someone was walking there lightly, calmly in their home clothes. It was her, and I was happy. Without him, he rang the doorbell. Oleja opened it almost immediately. She was wearing an elegant dress, and her hair was pulled back. She was surprised, not scared, not frozen, just surprised. I can come in. If it is business, then you can, she nodded curtly and walked away. Matthew entered the apartment, where everything smelled of comfort, cleanliness, and some kind of new light. He felt like a stranger, as if this house could no longer be entered without the invitation of fate. I've been thinking a lot, he began, clutching a paper cup of coffee. All this time, since when I left, I thought I wanted freedom, I wanted something bright and new, but in the end I lost everything that was real. Oleja listened in silence. Milan, well, didn't it justify it? We are strangers, there is nothing between us, constant quarrels, reproaches. She says, I am boring, and I don't know who I am anymore. Without a home, without a family, without you. She sighed. Maud, she said softly. I am glad you understood. However, it can and will be useful to you. You're a good person, you just lost your way. He came closer. Really? I am not asking you to forgive me right away, but maybe we can start with a clean slate. We are not notebooks, Matthew. And life is not a draft. You've already been, my chapter is long, confusing, with interesting pages, but it is over. He looked down, and I still love you. She looked at him calmly, without haste, and with a soft, tired, but honest smile replied, but I am not. He shuddered. I am not angry, I am not offended. I've already let go and forgiven everything, because holding a grudge is like drinking poison and waiting for someone else to get poisoned. I don't want that. But I don't want to go back either. I am not yours anymore. And the children? What is it? He asked softly. You don't tell the kids required. They're learning, they have their own worries. And a grudge against you. They'll forgive you in time. He was silent. You'll find someone to be with. Maybe someone will love you again. But it won't be me for sure. And you know it. Matthew nodded. Not immediately. Slowly, as if the inner wall had collapsed completely. He turned to the door. Before I went out, I looked back one more time. And you still have the same delicious pie. It tastes even better. Now I bake it only for those who deserve it. He spent the evening alone. I was eating dried cheese and rice cakes in the kitchen. Milana was not there. She went to meet with friends, leaving a list of products and an estimate for repairs on the table. He reread it 3 times, then folded it up and threw it in the trash. The lanterns came on outside the window. And one thought suddenly appeared so clearly in them. He had stayed outside forever. It has been 6 months. Everything settled down. The external and internal noise subsided. There is a steady breathing of days left. She was used to mornings alone, to the freedom to manage time, to the fact that it was always like this in her house. Whatever she wants. I baked pies on weekends, went to the library, sometimes to the theater, to a cafe with my friends. All this seemed to be additional before, but now it has become the main thing. She wrote articles in the evenings after work, participated in volunteer projects, talked to her sons via video link, and heard respect and warmth in their voices. They called not out of a sense of duty, but because they were drawn. I wanted to share the news with such a mother. Sometimes, passing by a mirror, Oleja held her gaze and thought in surprise, here I am, the one who has been living inside all these years. Finally she got out. Her life wasn't stormy, but it was real. Matthew was left alone, living in a rented apartment. The sons of the weather were still distant. The elder spoke politely but coldly. The younger one did not hide his resentment. Matthew tried to improve, called, offered help, wanted to come, but he felt it was too early, or maybe too late. At work, everything was kept on an honest word. His superiors no longer looked at him as the future. The deputy. His reputation was shaken. Matthew became inconspicuous, although he once dreamed of being important. Now he just came, did his own thing, and returned to an empty, rented apartment. In the evenings, he sometimes drove past their old house. The light in Oulage's windows was warm and constant. He didn't go up there anymore, just looked down and imagined her pouring herself tea, opening a book, turning on the torchlight, smiling. Is she happy? He thought and answered himself, yes, without me. And that is the most painful thing. Matthew gathered his courage and went to his mother in another city to apologize. He knew that she was so happy about his family happiness. Loved her, grandchildren, and Oulage. And the son destroyed the family and let her down, disgraced her, as she put it. His mother seemed to have grown cold towards him, but she used to love him so dearly. Communication improved a little, carefully, without the previous intimacy, but also without hostility. To be honest, I thought Oulage would find someone for herself, Matthew once said, sitting across the table from his mother. Well, I don't know, on evil, maybe, or just. She is used to having a man in the house. Loneliness is not her thing. Galina Ivanovna looked up from her knitting. She stared at her son for several seconds without blinking. Then, slowly, almost with a step, she said, "Are you judging by yourself?" Matthew was a little embarrassed, but did not answer. You're the one who needs someone to be around, to take care of, to cook, to support, to fill the silence, to praise, to admire. It is important for you to feel yourself meaningful. But at the expense of another person, as if you weren't enough on your own. And Oulage knows how to live not as a part of someone else's life, but as a self-sufficient person who supports himself with peace, joy, and order. No offense, son, no offense, but you look weak compared to her, because you always need someone as external assessment to believe in your worth. And she knows her worth even without an audience. Matthew was silent for a long time, looking into his cup with a cold one. Tea. You know, Mom, I guess I had it all. I just didn't understand it at the time. Mom didn't answer, just looked at him with such sad tenderness, as at a man who had broken his own fate. In the evening, he returned to an empty apartment. The refrigerator was humming in the kitchen. There are strange paintings on the wall, strange chandeliers on the ceiling. And only silence, mine forever. Thank you for listening to the story. Sorry for the mistakes. Write in the comments what you think. If you liked it, subscribe to the channel.